On any given day, this is my garage. It's cluttered, it's messy, it's full of past projects, kids' toys, a foldable table that I'm currently using for projects, and it's really just not a usable space. Anytime I want to do a project, like for change the oil in a vehicle or do a wood project or even come out here and laser engrave something, I really have to clean up the whole garage, move everything out of the way, and it's wasted time because this is not a usable space. So for what I want to do in the future is gut this entire garage and turn it into a workable space that doesn't deter me from coming out and getting things done. So stick around and see how my garage goes from this. Now with everything cleared out, you can really see how much space we have. I mean, this is 400 square feet of essentially empty space. There are hippies out there living in tinier houses. But the real problem is that there's no storage, there's no permanent workbenches, roll around workbenches, and really just usable space. We really haven't used this space to its potential. And over these next few videos, we're going to build cabinets with a workbench, a roll around workbench for something special. And we're really going to do it for a lot cheaper than what you think it would cost, because we're going to do it all ourselves and we're going to build it how you wish you could buy it from the store. And tag along and see how we make some of those items that people are paying absurd amounts of money for at their local big box store. So now what I've done is I've gone ahead and cleaned everything out, starting with a clean slate. What I want to do is make use of these 10-foot ceilings that I have and get some storage that uses the entire space. So the next project that I'm going to do is I'm going to build a shelf 24 inches deep, 30 inches wide. That's going to go all the way to the 10-foot ceiling. And we're going to set that up here in a minute and get started. Had to get my tool belt, just wasn't efficient working without it. So now I'm just trying to ease this trim off the wall without destroying everything and without ripping this caulking all the way up the wall. These little pry bars are perfect for this job. I'm going to need to save some of this because here in this corner and this seam comes out a little bit further than 30 inches. So I want to be able to save it to put back. And make it look like we knew what we were doing. Now, if you were to just buy a cabinet like this, that was this big or fit in this space, you would probably just roll it up to the side and you'd have a gap here and, a gap back here. And, it is a garage, so it would just fill up with spiders. And spiders are terrifying. Not debatable. A bit. Now what we're going to do is measure this, and I'm going to have to create a little cutout so that, because I want that 2x4 to go all the way to the floor to match up with the front framing. The reason I'm framing this up like this, instead of just building the whole thing out of melamine, is I really don't like melamine's ability to join to itself. If you ever bought those like cheap IKEA cabinets and stuff, you know that the hardware can tear out or it can break. It's a really durable material. It just doesn't have as good of properties as something like plywood, where a screw really holds really well through it. But what I do like about it is the coating, the texture on it. It's very easy to clean, and it looks nice once you paint it. Even without painting it, it looks nice. And once we get done with this, it'll look like we knew what we were doing. All right, I'm back at it, trying to figure out how we're going to do this frame. And I think I'm just going to put the frame on top of this wall where it comes out instead of notching it. Yeah. And with any luck, this will slide. And I got one more of those. It's to show this right in here, and it does. One more. All right. Now I've cut some cross braces. Simply gonna screw this all together. So that the outside measurement of this is 30 inches. All right, now we got the frames built. I'm gonna just try to get them into place on the wall. And as long as we did our job correctly, it should fit perfectly. We'll suck that right up to the wall. Hold that in place. Now, the other frame is going to sit right here. It's going to have cross pieces that go across it and then be tied into a wall on this side, if I can find a stud. And if not, I'll have to make some more cross members to go on that other wall. Let's keep going. So instead of just toe-nailing these into the frame, you know, with a screw at an angle, sometimes it's kind of awkward, and when you're working by yourself, it's not as easy to do. So one thing I keep around is one of these. It's like a single Craig jig for pocket holes. It's super simple to do. I just throw it up to the wood where I might want the pocket hole, clamp it in, and then I just keep a tape stop on my pocket hole drill bit, and it's super quick. It doesn't slow you down much. Loosen up a little bit. So
4 quick pocket holes. Nothing crazy, nothing precise. I just think it's an easier way. I can go ahead and start some screws in here, get it set. And it's just easier to me to do one-handed while I'm holding the frame instead of like trying to hold the screw and get it to the right angle. It's just a little bit easier and a handy little tool to have around and keep in your belt. So now that I've got these tacked up here, I can lift this large front and hopefully with only one hand attach them. So the reason I like doing framing like this for a cabinet is because I'm going to be putting some really heavy stuff in there. My router table, ideally I'll put my planer in there, and it gives me the ability to come in here and set up braces on these 2x4s to hold shelves. It makes it really strong. It also gives me a good connection point. Like I said, for the melamine, it doesn't screw to itself well. So screwing through it into this 2x4 gives it some structure. I don't really need a lot of these side supports because that 3/4 inch melamine is going to come over this and hold it all square and in place. I will attach the inboard side to the wall. Like I've already done this one. I'll do this one next, and that way this wall will give it its support, and then the melamine on the side will give it this side the support. So so I'm going to plumb it all up, make sure everything's square, possibly attach it to the ceiling, and get ready for some melamine. All right, so we've got our melamine set up here on the sawhorses, getting ready to cut. A little bit about melamine. It is a OSB type center with a plastic coating on the top and bottom. We've already talked about the differences in building with it. It doesn't hold hardware very well, like a plywood or a solid wood lumber would. There are special hardware that you can get for building with it. You may have seen some if you've ever built cabinets from IKEA or from Walmart or something like that. That's why I do the 2x4 framing, so I don't have to worry about that special hardware because all the pressure and tension on those screws is going to be going through this and holding into those 2x4s. The other difference in building with it is you really need a different saw blade. This is a 140 tooth blade specifically for cutting plywoods and OSB and veneers, and it's nothing too crazy. It's just as expensive as any other saw blade. Very good to have around, especially if you're going to build with any plywood, birch plywood, or nice oak veneered plywood or something like that. It cuts much differently than just your standard ripping blade. And then the technique for cutting this is actually to make a scoring cut. So we'll make a scoring cut just deep enough to cut this top layer of veneer, and then I'll make a full cut all the way through to cut it off. And all that does is it preserves this top veneer. If I was to just cut all the way through it on the first pass, you'd have these teeth coming up straight up and ripping up on this this veneer and possibly chipping it out. As you can see here on the edges, it kind of chips out. But if I just make just a shallow pass, the blades are not tearing up, they're just tearing forward, and it doesn't chip near as bad. Let me get this blade installed and we'll get this thing cut. Okay, so we learned something today. I'm going to share it with you because I made a mistake and it's something I told you that it turns out to be wrong. This 140 tooth blade that I got that says plywood, OSB, veneers, and plastics did terrible. It heated up very quickly, and the melamine coating melted onto the blade, which created more friction, more heat, and the blade got really sticky. So I put my rip blade back on and basically tried a couple different methods of cutting this, and what I ended up finding is that just cutting right through all the way to the bottom, but only having the blade stick out just beyond the thickness. So like 3/4 plus an eighth, an eighth of an inch protruding through the bottom. Ended up working out the best. Got a really nice clean cut on the underside. So if so cutting from this side, the underside veneer ended up being very nice. Top side chips out a little bit, but the underside cuts very clean. And I guess that's the way I'm going to be doing it from now on. All right, we're back. As you can see, I got that piece cut and up. I notched out for this bit of wall that sticks out here. And I also went ahead and cut a second piece that's short that goes in there. That seam and we will deal with later. And then I've gone ahead and countersunk, pre-drilled, and screwed these two panels to the 2x4 framing. The next thing I need to do is cut strips and make the face framing for the front, and then eventually we will make doors, and I want to leave it wide open, 2 large doors, so that I have ample room to move in here, install shelves when I figure out where I want them, and then once I get the face frame built and everything screwed together, I'll show you how we're gonna take care of all these nails, all these screw holes, this seams, and the screw holes on the front, and then we'll prime it and paint it, and it'll look good. We'll have tons of storage. All right, so there you have it. We've got our face frame done. Literally all I did was cut 3-inch strips, face frame it all the way around. Like I said, this is going to look completely different once it gets filled and sanded, primed, and painted. You won't even know all this stuff was here. So the next step is to fill all these screw holes, do the edge banding, which is an iron-on plastic strip. Very easy. You can get it at any big box store. It's called edge banding. So I will edge band all these edges that are exposed, all these doors, all the way around, iron on, very easy to do. And then fill it, give the entire, I'm going to caulk the edges, around the edges, because I want keep bugs out as best as possible. And then, because it is in the garage, we're going to be in here a lot more, trying to make this usable space, so I want to keep bugs at bay. And then I will come back, scuff sand this whole thing, and then prime it with a bonding primer. 123 Zinsser 123 is a product I have, and get it ready for paint. And so hopefully the next time you see this, it will be primed and ready for paint. All right, well, I got to looking at this last night, and I made a little bit of a change. I was only going to do 2 doors. I decided that those doors were entirely too big, and this 3/4 inch melamine is not light, and I don't want it ripping hinges out. So I ended up dividing it into 3 spots. The math worked out pretty well to have 36-inch tall openings all the way up, and I've gone ahead and cut my 3 doors with a 1/2 inch in every direction overlay. And that's the next thing I want to talk about, is doing the doors and setting up the hinges, and a cool little tool that I have that makes these hidden hinges much easier. All right, so these are my 3 doors. I went ahead and looked at them, inspected them, determined which side I want the hinge to go on, which side I want to be the visible side, and I've marked out my layout. I'm going to put 3 hinges on these doors because they are still kind of big. So I'm going ahead and marked out my vertical layout as far as where I want these hinges to fall, and then each hinge, when you buy a hidden hinge like this, it comes with installation measurements, tells you how far away from the edge, how much overlap, and how big the hole needs to be to inset this thing into its spot so that everything lines up correctly. And while yes, you could measure everything and figure it out, Craig makes this nifty little hidden hinge jig with a Forstner bit in the middle that is the correct size, 1 3/8, I believe, for these hidden hinges. It allows you to turn these and set your offset to the correct distance away from the edge, and to slide it right on. And as long as you have your vertical measurement, you can line it up with 0, grab your drill, set your depth for your pocket here, and then drill it, clamp it, drill it, move to the next one, clamp it, drill it, and it makes everything much easier. All right, now for a close-up demonstration of this, I'm gonna line up my 0 with my line, and then make sure this slides flat to the edge distance, stops, and I'm gonna clamp it into place. Just like this. Attach my drill. Now, one other neat little feature that this has, it has here and here, has 2 16th inch holes that will line up perfectly with your mounting hardware for your hinge. So I can get a 16th inch drill bit and drop it right in that hole. And then this hole. Well, with any luck, this was done correctly. Now I've got a large hole and my 2 countersink hole for my hardware, perfectly drilled. When squared up, they are centered. And that's it. All right, so I know I mentioned edge banding multiple times, and it dawned on me that not everybody knows what edge banding is. So I figured I would do a little demonstration of edge banding and how to apply it. So this is edge banding. You could find it the same place, any store that you buy the melamine at. It's typically by the shelving boards. And all it is just a plastic film with a heat activated glue on the back of it. The tools I have that I'm going to use are scissors, a little painter's tape, a razor blade, a roller. This is just a glue roller that I use to roll out glue, and a sanding block, and then a piece of aluminum foil. You can also use craft paper. This is just to protect the iron from getting any plastic or anything like that melted on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my edge banding, Start out by putting it at one side, and I know that I've got my out-facing door face this way, so I want to make sure that the edge banding is looks the best towards that side. And I'll lay the first piece on here, get it kind of straight, put a little piece of tape on it to hold it in place on this side, roll it all the way out along this. And then with a pair of scissors, just trim it slightly long. And now I'll slide it smooth, make sure it's up towards that front face. And then I'll use another piece of tape and hold that side into place. I have my iron all heated up. Read the instructions, said put it on the cotton setting, and that's what I have done. And it's all heated up. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my foil in the middle. I like to start from the middle and work out. So then easy, just take your iron, hold it on there for a few seconds. I'm not really pressing down on it hard. I'm just trying to get that heat transfer through that edge banding so that it activates that glue. I'll go over it a couple of times, stopping short of the tape because I don't want to get the tape on my iron. Letting that glue heat up. I'm going to take the iron off. Feel it. Yep, it's good and hot. And I can take my roller, not putting a ton of pressure on it, just kind of trying to make sure that glue is getting into those fibers, rolling out any air bubbles or anything like that. Now this is all held in place. I can take my tape off, slide my foil all the way to the edge. Then I just take my utility knife. Same on the other side. All right, now I can turn my door to the next side, burn my table down, and keep rolling. It's pretty easy. You want to make sure that before you put it down, that you've gone over and knocked all the debris off of it. I've already taken these doors and hit them with a sanding block just to make sure they're nice and smooth. That might be hanging out. And then you just repeat the process on this side and the other two sides. And you have a nice door. This is one that I've already completed. And you can see it creates a nice finished edge instead of that particle board face on this one. All right, now we're at the stage where I've got the entire cabinet, all the edges with the edge banding applied. I've got all the cabinet doors with all the edge banding applied. I have filled, sanded, and primed all the screw holes on this, any chipping or anything on this. The primer, well, let's start with the wood filler. the filler that I use is the color match wood filler by Minwax, and it worked really good. There was a good deal of shrinkage, you know, considering those screw holes were kind of deep, and so I ended up, you know, having to fill and sand 3 different times, but it worked out well. Sanded really well. Did it in the white light. It's really like a light color, so that it would kind of blend in with the primer. And then the primer that I'm using is the Zinsser cover stain. It is stain blocker and bond coat. Main thing I was looking for was the bond coat, because the melamine, part of its characteristics is stuff doesn't bond to it. So the bonding primer is specifically formulated to bond to stuff like that in tile and previously high gloss painted stuff. So now the next thing to do is paint and apply the hardware to the doors, the pulls, and hopefully the next time you see this, it will be in its final color. Okay, as you can see, got everything to its final color. It's kind of a gray, industrial colored, and it's in a satin finish. Satin cleans up a little bit better than flat. And now I'm off to installing the pulls. I wanted to do a video on this because I feel like it's something people mess up all the time, probably only because I mess it up all the time. So what I like to do is use a scrap piece and measure it out, mark my centers. In this case, I was able to do the edge distance, so that's one less measurement I'm working on, and try to install it in a scrap piece. That way, it does 2 things. It lets me make a mistake first, which is exactly what I did, because the first time I did it, did not fit. I measured these, I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's 5 inches on center. And it's actually just a hair off. So these perfectly drilled holes at 5 inches on center did not work. So, which is good that I did it on a piece of scrap wood instead of the actual door, because then I would have some oblong holes and I would know it. You wouldn't, but I would. So I redid it. I've got my jig set up. Now what that allows me to do is, for this one, which is the bottom door, the handle is mounted on the top. And this is the middle door. The handle, the pull is going to be mounted in the middle of the door. So I can pull my measurement, find my center for this is 36 and a half, or sorry, 18 and a half for a 37-inch door. Line my center up. My edge distance is already measured off on my scrap piece. Now all we got to do is push this all the way up against the edge, and then I use a second piece so that my drill bit doesn't blow out the back, and I sandwich the door. Use my pony clamps, clamp it in place. And then I've got my drill, and I went ahead and marked it with just a piece of tape, just so I would know, make sure I'm going deep enough, and then I can drill 2 holes. Remove my clamps. And then that should line up perfectly. So I'll find my hardware. Through, push this one through, and it lines up perfect. So that's just an easy way to do your hardware. It gives you a jig, and it allows you the opportunity to mess up as many times as you need to. till you get it right without messing up your doors. So next thing I'm going to do is get the rest of these holes drilled, and then I'm going to install the doors onto the cabinet. Not going to quite install the pulls because I want to go back and once everything gets into place and check it for paint, see if it needs any touch-ups, which I already know it does. And a couple little spots, so I'll put them up there, do some touch-ups, install the pulls, and then the next time you see this, the whole cabinet should be finished. And I'm also going to go ahead and throw in some shelves in there and put some equipment in there so you can see just how big it is and how much space saving it's going to add to the garage. Bam! There she is, all done. Handles installed, doors installed, loaded up with stuff. My planer. That was the main reason for building this, was that 94-pound planer. I actually lifted up the shelf a little bit because that's the perfect height for me to set it on my knees and then slide it in. And that's the main reason, because I didn't want to haul that thing to my storage shed. And but the rest of it's packed up. I got my router table, router accessories in here. This one's empty right now, but we'll get some stuff loaded up in it and try to clear out this mess a little bit. I appreciate you for watching, and if you like what you saw, hit that thumbs up. If you didn't like what you saw, go tell me about it in the comments, and we'll see you on the next one. We got a lot more planned, a lot more coming inside this garage, and hopefully the future. Thanks.